Have you ever felt a connection so intense, so immediate, that it felt like destiny itself had intervened? A person who didn't just listen to your words, but seemed to understand the very melody of your soul, mirroring your deepest passions and most hidden insecurities with an accuracy that was both thrilling and profoundly comforting. It's a dizzying, intoxicating experience, the feeling of being truly seen, of finding a human being so perfectly attuned to your own that it feels like coming home. But what if that feeling of serendipity isn't a sign of fate, but a meticulously crafted illusion? What if the person who seems to be your perfect counterpart is not connecting with you, but methodically studying you, using your own vulnerabilities as a blueprint to gain your absolute trust before they begin to dismantle your world from the inside out? Consider the unsettling reality that the architects of such profound emotional chaos are not mythical monsters lurking in the shadows, but individuals who walk among us every single day. They are our colleagues, our friends, the magnetic stranger at a party, or even the person we share our bed with. Experts estimate that approximately 1 in every 100 people possesses psychopathic traits, a statistic that transforms a distant psychological concept into a chillingly proximate threat. This isn't about villains from a movie. It's about the high-functioning predator disguised in plain sight, a person who can simulate warmth and confidence while harboring a profound emptiness within. You have almost certainly encountered one. The terrifying question is, did you recognize them, or are you at this very moment caught in a web of their design, slowly beginning to question your perceptions, your emotions, and the very ground you stand on? The greatest danger lies not in their malice, but in their subtlety. Their method is not a frontal assault, but a slow creeping psychological erosion that leaves you drained, confused, and questioning your own sanity. They operate under the cover of charm and normalcy, making their manipulative tactics incredibly difficult to detect until significant damage has already been done. They are masters of making you feel like the problem, of twisting your reactions into proof of your own instability. But you are not powerless, and your intuition is not paranoia. Recognizing their strategy is the first and most critical step toward reclaiming your reality. Understanding the unmistakable signs of their presence is not just an intellectual exercise. It is an act of self-preservation, a way to draw a line in the sand and protect your emotional and psychological well-being. What follows is not a list of textbook definitions, but a guide to the real-world red flags, the lived experiences that signal you are in the presence of a predator, and the profound wisdom you need to not just survive, but to walk away whole. You first encounter them, and it feels less like a meeting and more like a collision with destiny. This person, this stranger, seems to get you in a way that no one ever has before. It's an instantaneous rapport, a spark that feels almost supernatural. They don't just listen to what you say. They seem to hear the things you leave unspoken. They pick up on your unique sense of humor, share your obscure passions, and speak to your deepest insecurities with a gentleness that feels like a balm. It's as if they were tailor-made for you, a missing piece of your own puzzle. In those early days and weeks, the feeling is one of overwhelming validation. They remember the smallest, most insignificant details from your conversations. They champion your dreams and soothe your fears with perfectly chosen words, delivered at precisely the right moments. The thought that inevitably crosses your mind is a sigh of profound relief. Finally, someone understands me. But this feeling, as magical and fated as it appears, is not serendipity. It is a strategy. This is the entry point for a psychopath, not through overt aggression or intimidation, but through a campaign of charm so exquisitely crafted and personalized that you mistake it for genuine love. In reality, it is manipulation wearing its most beautiful mask. They are not connecting with you, they are conducting reconnaissance. They are studying you with the intensity of a predator learning its prey. Every compliment that makes you blush, every shared secret that fosters a sense of intimacy, every thoughtful gesture that makes you feel cherished. These are not spontaneous acts of affection. They are tools meticulously selected and deployed to dig deeper into the architecture of your mind. They are learning what makes you tick, what you crave more than anything, and what you fear most in the world. This is not a process of building a relationship. It is a process of gathering intelligence. Psychopaths are in essence emotional tacticians. Lacking the ability to genuinely feel emotions like empathy or love, they spend their lives observing others, learning to mimic the behaviors associated with these feelings. They become masters of disguise chameleons who can reflect back to you the very best version of yourself, the version you've always wanted to see in a partner. When you mention offhandedly that you're feeling exhausted and undervalued at work, they don't just offer a sympathetic nod. They become the one person who truly grasps the depth of your frustration, perhaps sharing a fabricated story of their own that mirrors yours perfectly. This creates an immediate and powerful sense of alliance. It feels like you've found a kindred spirit in a cold world. But what is actually happening is that they have identified a vulnerability, a point of pain, which they can later exploit. Imagine you share a story about a childhood dream you've long since abandoned. The next day, they might present you with a small gift or an article related to that very dream, looking at you with what appears to be deep, soulful understanding. The gesture itself is touching, but its purpose is strategic. It's designed to accelerate intimacy, to make you feel so profoundly understood that you lower your natural defenses at a dizzying speed. This initial phase is often referred to as love bombing, but the term can be misleading, suggesting a chaotic and overwhelming flood of affection. In the hands of a psychopath, it is anything but chaotic. It is systematic. It is a carefully calibrated assault of validation, attention, and affection. Your phone is constantly buzzing with sweet texts and declarations of their growing feelings. They speak of a future with you sometimes within weeks of meeting in a way that feels both exhilarating and deeply reassuring. They make you feel chosen, special, and above all safe. This intense showering of attention is designed to get you addicted to the validation they provide. However, the foundation of this entire performance is conditional. It is predicated on your compliance. The moment you push back, assert a boundary, or reclaim a small piece of your autonomy, the mask slips. Perhaps you're busy and don't respond to a text right away. Perhaps you question a small inconsistency in one of their stories. The reaction is immediate and chilling. The warmth that felt like a constant sunbeam vanishes, replaced by an unnerving coldness. They become distant, dismissive, or even overtly irritated. You are left reeling, scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. Your mind races trying to bridge the gap between the adoring partner of yesterday and the cold stranger of today. This sudden switch is the first major red flag. The superficial charm disappears the instant you cease to be a perfect mirror for their needs or a source of effortless validation. The experience is profoundly confusing because their initial performance was so convincing, so seemingly genuine. You begin to rationalize their behavior, telling yourself they must be stressed or that you're overreacting. This emotional whiplash is not a bug in their system. It is a feature. It is a deliberate tactic to keep you off balance, to foster self-doubt, and to make you more malleable and easier to control. You start to work harder to regain their approval, to get back to the intoxicating, perfect phase, and in doing so, you cede more and more of your own power. This is where the wisdom of Stoic philosophy offers a powerful anchor. A core tenet of Stoicism is the clear distinction between what is within our control and what is not. You cannot control another person's intentions or the authenticity of their feelings, but you can control your own perceptions and responses. A Stoic does not seek to control others, but focuses on achieving self-mastery. This means learning to recognize when your emotions are being hijacked by external forces. It calls for slowing down, for stepping back from the intoxicating rush of emotion, and for observing the facts of a situation with calm clarity. When you feel overwhelmed by someone's charm, especially when it feels too perfect, too fast, you must resist the urge to be swept away. Instead, ask yourself a critical question. Am I being loved, or am I being studied? Real, authentic connection is not built overnight. It is a slow, steady process of mutual discovery, complete with the friction, misunderstandings, and vulnerabilities that characterize genuine human interaction. If someone is rushing intimacy, overwhelming you with praise, and seamlessly adapting to every facet of your personality without any friction of their own, that is not a sign of authenticity. It is a sign of a carefully scripted performance. You must learn to trust your gut. That quiet, uneasy feeling you get when something seems too good to be true is not irrational paranoia. It is your subconscious mind recognizing patterns, picking up on the subtle inconsistencies between their words and the faint, almost imperceptible emotional hollowness behind them. You don't need to confront them or start a fight. You simply need to observe, to take space, and to let time do its work. A psychopath cannot maintain the performance of perfection indefinitely. The mask is heavy, and eventually it will slip, especially when you assert a boundary or disrupt their sense of control. Ultimately, Stoicism isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about understanding your emotions and refusing to let another person become their puppet master. You can remain a kind, warm, and open person, but you must do so with your eyes wide open, understanding that some of the most perfect-seeming connections are not love, but traps dressed in its clothing. If someone's affection feels less like a steady, warming glow and more like a blinding, intense spotlight, too tailored, too sudden, too perfect, that is your signal to pause and take a step back. That charm is not a gift. It is bait. Recognizing it for what it is the first crucial step in protecting yourself from the profound damage that always follows. You find yourself sitting in your car, the engine off, the silence amplifying the frantic pounding of your heart as you scroll through a text exchange. You are reading words on a screen, but your mind is replaying a conversation from the day before. You remember it with perfect clarity, the tone of his voice, the exact phrasing he used, the promise he made. But now, as you read his messages, he is calmly and confidently claiming that he never said any such thing. More than that, he is subtly implying that you must have misunderstood, that you overreacted, that perhaps you even imagined the entire exchange. He is poised and rational, while you feel a dizzying spiral of confusion and self-doubt begin to take hold. You start second-guessing the evidence of your own mind. Did I misinterpret his words? Was I too sensitive? Maybe I really am overthinking everything. This insidious experience, this quiet unraveling of your own reality, is what pathological lying and psychological manipulation feel like in the real world. It's not a vague concept from a psychology textbook. It is a daily, lived experience that slowly and methodically chips away at your perception of truth. If this scenario feels chillingly familiar, you are not alone. This is the second unmistakable sign that you may be dealing with a psychopath, and it is one of the most dangerous because its ultimate goal is not just to confuse you, but to rewire your very sense of self. People like the man in this example don't lie in the way that most people do. A typical lie is often born of a desire to avoid conflict, spare someone's feelings, or escape consequences. Psychopathic lying is fundamentally different. It is compulsive, strategic, and often deployed when it is entirely unnecessary. They will lie when the truth would be simpler and easier, because the act of lying itself provides them with a sense of power. To control the narrative is to control your perception of reality, and to control your perception is ultimately to control you. They are masters at crafting elaborate, convincing stories about their past, their accomplishments, their relationships, their very emotions. They might weave a tale of a traumatic childhood that elicits your deepest sympathy, only for you to notice later that the key details of the story shift and change depending on their audience or their mood. What was once a tragic accident might become a story of violent betrayal. One day they were raised by a stern, unloving father. The next, it was a neglectful, absent mother. You begin to notice the cracks in their narratives, the small inconsistencies that don't quite add up. But each time you gently question them, they have a preternatural ability to twist the story again, to reframe it in a way that makes you feel guilty or foolish for even asking. They might feign outrage that you would doubt them, or they might play the victim, wounded by your lack of trust. Somehow you always end up being the one to apologize, even when you were simply seeking clarity. This is the fertile ground in which gaslighting takes root. Gaslighting is not just lying. It is a deliberate and sustained psychological war designed to make you question what you know to be true. They will say something undeniably cruel and then hours later insist with a straight face that it never happened. They will make a solemn promise, break it without a second thought, and then vehemently deny that the promise was ever made in the first place. They will intentionally provoke you, pushing your buttons until you react with anger or tears, and then calmly accuse you of being unstable or too emotional. Over time, the cumulative effect of this tactic is devastating. You stop trusting your own memory. You stop speaking up for fear of being told you're crazy. You begin to filter your own thoughts and feelings through a thick fog of self-doubt. The manipulation often extends beyond just the two of you. A psychopath is a master of a tactic known as triangulation. Let's return to the example of Matt. He might pull you aside with a concerned expression and tell you that your coworker Jen has been saying negative things about you behind your back. He presents this information as an act of loyalty, positioning himself as your sole protector. Simultaneously, he is having a similar conversation with Jen, telling her that you have a problem with her work or her attitude. He skillfully plays both sides quietly, stirring a pot of paranoia and mistrust. The result is that you become isolated. You feel that the only person you can truly trust, the only one who seems to understand what's going on, is Matt. But this is a carefully constructed trap. He has manufactured the very drama that he pretends to be protecting you from, ensuring that he remains the central, indispensable figure in your emotional world. This tactic is devastatingly effective because it cuts you off from your support systems while simultaneously elevating his importance in your life. Psychologically, what you are grappling with is an individual who lacks a functioning moral compass. A psychopath does not experience guilt or remorse in the way a neurotypical person does. Lying doesn't cause them internal conflict or distress. It is simply a tool, a weapon to be wielded with precision and skill. They are not burdened by a conscience. They understand the emotional weight of words, which is precisely why their lies are so effective. They often weave in just enough truth to make their fabrications believable. They have studied you and know which version of reality you are most likely to accept. And once they land on it, they will cling to that version with an unnerving conviction, even when confronted with undeniable proof to the contrary. So what can you do when you find yourself trapped in this disorienting mind game? Stoic philosophy offers a lifeline. One of the central tenets of Stoic thought is the practice of learning to distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control whether another person chooses to lie. You cannot force them to acknowledge the truth, but you can, with discipline, control your own response. Stoicism teaches emotional fortitude, not emotional detachment. It encourages you to observe the situation without immediately reacting, to take a mental step back and ask yourself, is what I'm hearing true, or is this an attempt to manipulate my perception? You must release the need to win the argument or convince them of your reality. Your goal is not to defeat them. Your goal is to protect your own mind, your clarity, and your peace. A practical Stoic exercise in this situation is to document what happens. Write down the conversations, the dates, the specific events. This is not for the purpose of gathering evidence to use against them in a future confrontation. It is for you. It is to create an external objective record that can serve as an anchor for your own mind when the waves of gaslighting begin to make you waver. When they try to rewrite history, you can refer back to your own notes and ground yourself in what is real. Another crucial step is to talk to people you trust, people who are outside the manipulator's sphere of influence. Let them serve as a mirror, reflecting back to you the person you were before the confusion set in. Let them remind you of your own soundness of mind. Most importantly, when you recognize this pattern, when the truth is constantly shifting, when your memory is consistently put on trial, when you are made to feel unstable for simply asking questions, you must recognize it for what it is, a form of psychological warfare. You are not broken. You are being systematically broken down by someone who views your confusion as an opportunity for greater control. This is your second unmistakable sign that you are dealing with a psychopath. It is not just a reason to be cautious. It is a reason to run. The longer you remain in that environment, the further you will drift from the anchor of your own reality, and the harder the battle will be to find your way back to yourself. Have you ever found yourself in a moment of pure vulnerability, pouring your heart out to someone about a struggle, a heartbreak, or a deep-seated fear, only to be met with a response so hollow it sends a chill down your spine? You are emotionally exposed, offering a piece of your soul in search of comfort and connection, but the reaction you receive feels flat, scripted, or bizarrely detached. It's as if your pain, so real and raw to you, simply bounced off a glass wall. That specific moment when you realize the person hearing your deepest vulnerability is reacting as if they are watching a scene in a movie rather than sharing a human experience with you is a glimpse into the profound and unsettling emptiness of a person who lacks empathy. This emotional deafness is the third major sign that you are dealing with a psychopath. Psychopaths are experts at the mechanics of emotion, but they are strangers to its essence. They can observe your sadness, recognize your joy, label your anger, and even imitate the appropriate corresponding facial expressions and verbal responses with an unsettling precision. What they cannot do is feel it. The connection you believe you are experiencing with them is not a shared emotional state. It is a performance. It's akin to watching a technically brilliant actor deliver a monologue. All the right words are there, the timing is perfect, the gestures are convincing, but something fundamental is missing of the intangible human spark, the soul of the experience. Empathy is the very heartbeat of genuine human connection. It's the invisible thread that allows us to flinch when we see someone else get hurt, to feel a lump in our throat during a moving story, or to sit in compassionate silence with a grieving friend and feel a shadow of their sorrow in our own chest. A psychopath does not possess this capacity. They are emotionally tone-deaf. They perceive your feelings in the same way someone might watch a foreign film without subtitles. They can see that things are happening on the screen. They can describe the visible actions, but the emotional content and meaning are completely lost on them. Because of this profound internal void, their responses to other people's suffering can often feel bizarrely off-kilter. When you are consumed with anxiety or heartbroken over a loss, they may offer advice that is cold and clinical, a logical but soulless solution that completely misses the emotional point. Worse, they might respond with visible annoyance or impatience because your emotional distress is an inconvenience to them. They don't process your sadness as a human experience to be held with care. They see it as a disruption to their own comfort, a problem to be solved quickly, or a frustrating distraction from their own needs. This emotional vacancy is not just a personality quirk, It is deeply dangerous. It allows the psychopath to view other human beings not as individuals with inherent worth and dignity, but as objects or tools. People in their worldview are either useful or they are irrelevant. There is no in-between. This is a critical distinction from simple selfishness. A selfish person might prioritize their own needs, but can still feel pangs of guilt or regret when they know they have caused someone harmed. A psychopath feels nothing. To them, your emotions are merely data points, information to be studied, cataloged, and later used to manipulate or weaponize against you. You will notice this in a series of subtle, unsettling moments that accumulate over time. You might be grieving the death of a loved one, and they will make an inappropriate joke or impatiently try to change the subject. You might be telling them about a past trauma that shattered you, and you'll catch a look of profound boredom in their eyes before they quickly replace it with a mask of feigned concern. These are not just signs of emotional immaturity or social awkwardness. They are windows into a mind that operates on a completely different emotional frequency from yours. You may find yourself trying harder, thinking that if you could only explain your feelings more clearly, show more emotion, or find the right words, they would finally understand. But they won't. They can't, even in what appear to be their closest, most intimate relationships. This fundamental lack of emotional depth is a defining feature. They can mimic love sometimes with breathtaking skill for months or even years, but the performance is exhausting, and eventually the mask begins to slip. They will grow irritated by your normal human need for emotional connection and reassurance. They will become increasingly cold, distant, and critical, leaving you bewildered and wondering what you did to cause this change. The devastating truth is that nothing changed. You simply ran out of usefulness, or the effort required to maintain the charade became too great for them to sustain. The most dangerous aspect of their lack of empathy is revealed when you are at your most vulnerable. They do not meet your vulnerability with compassion. They see it as an opportunity and store it away like ammunition. That deep secret you shared with them during a late-night conversation, the one you've never told anyone else, the one you shared because you finally felt safe, it is now in their arsenal. And one day, likely, in a moment when you are already hurting or during a conflict, they will use it against you. They will twist it, reframe it, and hurl it back at you as a way to shame, control, or break you. The moment that happens, it reveals everything you need to know about their true nature. The information was never received with care. It was recorded for future leverage. Stoic philosophy provides a powerful lens through which to view this experience. The Roman philosopher Seneca wisely observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you are in a relationship with a person who lacks empathy, you are constantly suffering in your imagination. You project your own capacity for feeling onto them. You desperately want to believe that they care, that deep down they feel the love you feel. You interpret the smallest crumbs of affection as proof of a feast, mistaking their cold, calculated analysis for genuine concern. Stoicism, however, teaches you to ground yourself in what is not in what you wish were true. If a person repeatedly meets your pain with indifference, irritation, or self-interest, you must believe the evidence of their actions. Stop chasing a potential that does not exist. Observe their patterns, not their promises. What is within your control is your own emotional clarity. Pay close attention to how you feel in their presence, not just during the exciting highs of the love-bombing phase, but especially when you are low sad or in need. Do they lean in with genuine warmth, or do they withdraw and become cold? Do they use your shared feelings as a bridge to build deeper connection, or do they use them as leverage to gain power? You must stop waiting for empathy to magically appear in a place where it does not and cannot exist. Your job is to protect your own emotional truth. Do not exhaust yourself trying to fix someone who does not even perceive that there is a problem. Ask yourself, honestly, have you ever been in a relationship where you felt profoundly, achingly alone, even when the other person was sitting right next to you? where you offered them your soul and in return received a lecture, a smirk, or a vacant stare, where it felt like your pain was not being shared but studied. If that resonates deep within you, it is a sign you cannot afford to ignore. It is the final piece of evidence that the person in front of you is incapable of the connection you seek, and staying only guarantees that you will continue to pour your heart into an empty vessel. It begins so subtly that you might not even recognize it as a pattern at first. It's a borrowed car that is returned late with an empty tank of gas. It's a request to stay on your couch for a week that quietly stretches into a month and then another. It's a shared credit card intended only for emergencies that starts to accrue charges for their daily luxuries. They never frame these actions as taking. In their language, it's sharing. It's us against the world. It's building a future together. But beneath this veneer of partnership, a much darker truth is unfolding. You are not in a partnership. You are being harvested. This is the fourth unmistakable sign that you are dealing with a psychopath, a parasitic lifestyle, and the systematic exploitation of others. This is not about someone who occasionally needs to lean on you during a genuine hard time. This is about an individual whose entire mode of existence is built upon using other people as resources, as stepping stones to be used, drained, and then callously discarded. Let's imagine you meet someone like Erin. She is a whirlwind of charisma and ambition, her conversations sparkling with grand business ventures, spontaneous travel plans, and exciting world-changing ideas. At first, her energy is infectious and inspiring. She makes you feel that with her life could be bigger, fuller, and more adventurous. But you soon begin to notice that these magnificent dreams always come with a price tag, and you are always the one expected to pay it. There is always a sudden roadblock in her path, an investor who inexplicably backed out at the last minute, a sudden family emergency that requires a large sum of cash, a temporary cash flow issue with her business. And every single time you are presented as the perfect, obvious solution. She is a master at framing her requests, not as her needing help, but as an opportunity for the two of you to build something great together. It's never, "Can you lend me money?" but rather, "If you could just front me the capital for this, we'll both be rich in 6 months." So you loan her the money, convinced by her passion and her promises to pay you back next week. Next week becomes next month, and next month becomes never. You let her crash at your place for what you believe is a few nights, and before you know it, her belongings have slowly migrated from a suitcase into your drawers and closets. She has stopped contributing to bills or groceries and has subtly yet effectively made your home hers. These violations of your boundaries don't happen all at once in a shocking breach. They are a slow, creeping invasion, one small, reasonable-sounding request at a time, until you wake up one day and realize your life has been completely colonized. The crucial difference between a psychopath and someone who is merely selfish or opportunistic lies in the concept of entitlement. Psychopaths don't just take what is yours, they believe they are fundamentally entitled to it. In their minds, they are not viewing your sacrifices as acts of generosity that warrant gratitude. They see them as overdue debts that the world, and by extension you, owes them. Consequently, they feel not a single ounce of guilt or remorse as they bleed you dry emotionally, financially, and spiritually. To them, people are not partners. They are resources no different from a bank account or a free hotel. They are emotional and financial leeches who latch onto a host, suck every drop of life and energy out of them, and then detach themselves the second the host is no longer of use, often moving seamlessly to the next. This parasitic behavior often follows a predictable, formulaic pattern. First, they idealize you. You are the most generous, understanding, and brilliant person they have ever met. This initial phase of intense flattery is designed to secure your attachment and make you feel special, priming you to give. Once they have pulled you into their orbit and feel confident in your loyalty, they begin the slow, insidious process of devaluing you. They start to question your judgment, mock your ambitions, especially those that don't involve them, and make subtle cutting comparisons between you and others. This is a tactic to chip away at your self-esteem, making you feel less confident and more dependent on their approval, which in turn makes you less likely to challenge their exploitative behavior. And finally, once they have taken everything they wanted, your money, your home, your emotional support, your social connections, they discard you. The discard is often shockingly cold, abrupt, and can happen at the very moment when you are at your most vulnerable and need them the most. But they rarely leave without keeping a few strings attached. They might forget to return a key to your apartment. They might hold on to your Netflix password or continue to use your Uber account. These are not innocent oversights. They are strategic footholds, potential access points they can use to re-enter your life and extract more from you later if the need arises. Meanwhile, you are left not just financially depleted, but emotionally hollowed out. You question your own judgment, your own generosity. You doubt your worth and torture yourself, wondering how you could have been so blind. The truth is, they are exceptionally skilled at spotting the people who are most likely to give. They are predators who look for the telltale signs of a good host empathy, a history of success, or most potently recent vulnerability. If you've just gotten out of a long-term relationship, are grieving a loss, or are starting over in a new city, you are a prime target. They can read these cues with chilling accuracy and feel no shame in exploiting your kindness. In their twisted logic, they often blame the victim. If you were smart enough, you wouldn't have let them take advantage of you. They hold you responsible for the damage they inflict. Psychologically, they operate with a hollow sense of self that is often masked by a grandiose exterior or a relentless charm. They don't form real reciprocal bonds with people. They form attachments of convenience that serve a specific purpose. If you cease to serve that purpose, your value in their eyes drops to absolute zero. This is where the wisdom of Stoic philosophy can serve as a shield. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." A psychopath's hunger, by contrast, is a bottomless pit. No amount of your love, help, money, or support will ever be enough to fill their internal void, because they are not seeking connection. They are seeking control and resources. You cannot outgive their need. You cannot fix their emptiness, but you can and you must protect your own. Stoicism teaches us to place our inner peace above material possessions and our personal virtue above the need for external validation. When you recognize that someone is repeatedly taking far more than they give, when your personal boundaries are being tested and violated over and over again, it is not your job to keep explaining or justifying your limits. It is your job to hold them firmly and without apology. This is not an act of anger, it is an act of wisdom. Once you see the pattern of exploitation clearly, you no longer owe them access to your life, your home, or your heart. You must reclaim your space, your time, your money, and your self-respect. To a psychopath, your generosity is not a gift. It is simply a resource to be consumed. The longer you wait to draw the line and cut off the supply, the more of yourself you will lose. Seeing the pattern for what it is, not just inconsiderate behavior, but a deliberate and parasitic mode of survival that comes at your direct expense, is the key to walking away with your own life still intact. There is a certain type of individual whose life story is a perpetual motion machine of chaos. No job ever seems to last. Their romantic history is a graveyard of broken promises and dramatic exits. They tell compelling stories of constant betrayal, unfair treatment, and staggering bad luck. Yet the one common thread woven through every single tale of woe is that somehow none of it is ever their fault. If you spend enough time in their orbit, you will inevitably find yourself playing the role of crisis manager, cleaning up messes that are not yours, carrying emotional burdens you did not create, and even apologizing for things you never did. This is the fifth and final warning sign that you may be dealing with a psychopath, a life characterized by deep-seated impulsivity and a chronic, unshakable refusal to take responsibility for their actions even when faced with the undeniable harm they have caused. Unlike some of the slower, more calculated manipulative tactics, this trait can feel almost frantic in its expression. Psychopaths have a deep-seated need for stimulation and a very low tolerance for boredom. To them, routine is a kind of death and stability feels like suffocation. Consequently, they are always chasing the next thrill, the next high, the next dramatic upheaval. This might manifest as a spontaneous move across the country with no plan, a reckless investment in a get-rich-quick scheme, or a sudden dive into a new, intense relationship. They live entirely in the moment, driven by impulse and desire, with a shocking disregard for how their choices will detonate in the lives of those around them. The fallout of their actions is left in their wake like shattered glass on a road, and it is always others who are forced to walk across it. Consider someone like Jason. On the surface, he is magnetic and exciting. His mind is always buzzing with big plans, new ventures, and revolutionary ideas that promise to change the world. But if you look past the dazzling charm, you see a consistent and undeniable trail of destruction. He bounces from one startup idea to the next, abandoning each one the moment it requires sustained, unglamorous work. He borrows money from friends and family with sincere promises to repay it, but never does. He crashes at friends' places for a couple of weeks and ends up staying for months, overstaying his welcome until he is asked to leave. And when each of these situations inevitably falls apart, he spins the exact same narrative. It wasn't his fault. The investors were short-sighted and pulled out. His ex-girlfriend was too controlling and suffocated his creativity. His boss was a fool who just didn't appreciate his visionary talent. What makes this pattern so profoundly destructive is not just the chaos they create, but the unshakable denial that accompanies it. Most people, when they make a mistake or a poor choice, experience some level of reflection. They may feel guilt, shame, or regret. They try to make amends, or at the very least learn from the experience to avoid repeating it. Psychopaths do not do this. They are constitutionally allergic to accountability. Instead of self-reflection, they engage in reality rewriting. They expertly recast themselves as the perpetual victim in every scenario, and they do it with such conviction that you might find yourself believing them, defending them against their accusers, even as they are slowly eroding your own peace and draining your resources. Psychologically, this behavior reveals something far deeper than mere immaturity or bad habits. It reflects a fractured moral compass and a worldview in which their own personal pleasure and stimulation will always outweigh the well-being, stability, and feelings of others. There is no internal braking system, no moment of pause between a desire and the action taken to fulfill it. They act first and only deal with the consequences later, if at all, and only when they are absolutely forced to. Even then, the blame is never theirs to own. It is always projected outward onto someone or something else. This chronic lack of responsibility isn't a random character flaw. It is a core survival strategy. It allows them to keep moving through life without the emotional weight of remorse, without the burden of having to repair the damage they cause, and without the uncomfortable necessity of introspection and growth. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful tool for maintaining your own sanity in the face of this kind of chaos. Chrysippus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, stated, "He who errs in action errs in judgment." When you are caught in the hurricane of someone else's dysfunction, it is incredibly easy to start feeling like the irrationality swirling around you is somehow your fault, that you weren't supportive enough, understanding enough, or patient enough. But Stoicism teaches you to draw a firm line and separate yourself from another person's poor judgment. Their erratic choices, their cycles of self-destruction, are not your burden to carry. You will never find your own peace if you are constantly trying to hold together someone who thrives on disorder. When you see that someone's life is an endless loop of self-inflicted crises and that they spin out time and time again while expecting you to be the safety net that catches them every time, you must recognize this not as instability, but as a profound form of entitlement. You'll notice it in the way they demand forgiveness without ever offering an apology. You'll see it in their expectation of your unwavering commitment without offering any consistency in return. You'll feel it in their demand for your support without ever contributing anything themselves. You will hear it in their life stories, in which they are always the one who was wronged and never the one responsible. And you will feel it in the deep soul-crushing exhaustion that comes from constantly having to explain away their behavior. The discomfort of being blamed the moment you finally say no, and the guilt they so skillfully project onto you when you begin to protect your own boundaries. There is also something deeply disorienting about their emotional volatility, which is often tied to this impulsivity. They can be playful, charming, and intensely affectionate one day, and then cold, cruel, and distant the next. These dramatic shifts are not random mood swings. They are often defense mechanisms that are triggered the moment they are held accountable for their actions, or when the negative consequences of their behavior finally catch up to them. When confronted with the truth, they will either explode in a rage, disappear completely, or transform into a wounded, pitiable victim. The change can be so jarring that you begin to question your own memory of who they truly are. The solution is not to try and fix them, it is to free yourself. Because no matter how much compassion you offer, how many second chances you give, or how tightly you try to hold on, they will not change. They will not change, not because they are incapable of it, but because, from their perspective, they do not see a problem. The idea of growing up, of being accountable, of choosing stability over chaos, holds absolutely no appeal to them. The very behaviors that cause so much destruction in your life are the ones they use to feel alive. You must see this for what it is, not an unfortunate set of character flaws, but a fundamental way of life that will inevitably pull you under if you remain too close. Practicing stoic detachment in this context does not mean hardening your heart or becoming a cold person. It means protecting your peace. It means understanding the profound truth that compassion for another person does not require you to become collateral damage in their self-made disasters. You are not obligated to fix what they continually and deliberately choose to break. If any of this has felt painfully, achingly familiar, know that you are not alone, and you are not crazy. You have simply been given a glimpse behind the mask of a master manipulator. And now that you know the truth, you have power. Do not wait for more damage to be done. Do not wait for them to change. Protect your peace, trust your gut, and take back your life.